How you doing? This is Mr. Taberi. I'm here today to give you a demonstration on starter motor removal and replacement. So what we got here is a 2001 Chevy Venture van. So we're going to go ahead. This is a relatively easy vehicle to work on. These 3.4s, 3.1s, starter motor is easily accessible. So we're going to start off with some basic things. The first step to removing a starter motor is disconnecting the negative side of the battery. So I'll show you here. I've already got it disconnected. Real quick, we got the junction block right here. We just unbolted, moved this out of the way so we can gain access to our battery, which you can see is right down there. Kind of difficult to see, but our negative terminal is right here. So that's our negative connector. It's already unbolted and it's pushed down and out of the way, away from the battery itself. So now that that's disconnected, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to raise and support the vehicle, gain access to the bottom of the vehicle so we can see the starter motor and begin the disassembly. Okay. Alright, underneath here we can take a look. We can see our starter motor. Starter motor is located right here. Okay, so this right down here is our starter motor body. Okay, and then underneath here we got our starter motor bolt. We got two bolts that hold the starter motor in place. Bell never gets old. So we got these bolts right here. So this is the starter motor bolt. I've got another bolt all the way up the top right there. You can kind of see it. It's right there. Okay, so we're going to remove those two bolts to actually drop the starter motor down. But before we do that, we want to actually locate where our wires are. So our next step in this whole entire process, after raising and supporting the vehicle, is to locate the wires on the starter motor. So I'm going to tilt this just a little bit. We can see if we take a look at them. So right in the back there, you'll notice we got a couple of wires. Okay, we have a very large wire. It's red. It's this wire right here. This large diameter wire, this is the power wire to our starter system. Then we have a purple wire right down here. Okay, you can kind of see it. That purple wire is our feed from our ignition switch, or in this vehicle's case, the PCM. So the powertrain control module, because this is controlled by the computer circuit for automatic cranking. Okay. So this one is what's going to energize the solenoid at this purple wire. Once it energizes the solenoid, it's going to transfer electricity from the power wire on the top of the solenoid down into the starter motor body. Okay. So the next step that we're going to do here for this particular car is we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove the bolts. Let's go back to those guys. We're going to remove the bolts that are involved in holding the starter motor in place. And once we get these guys out of here, then we'll go ahead and we'll start working on tearing apart the wires, removing them from the starter solenoid. Alright, I got the two bolts out that hold the starter motor in place. We're going to take a quick look at these bolts. Okay, one is going to be larger and longer than the other one. Okay, they're both 15mm head bolts. Okay, and if we take a close look at it, what we want to do is we want to look at this section right here. This section has crosshatch marks on here. This is to keep this bolt from rotating when it's mounted up inside of the starter, because the starter produces a lot of torque. We want to prevent these bolts from automatically backing themselves out. So this is the other bolt. It's a little bit smaller in diameter, or in length, sorry. Same thing, it's got the crosshatch on there to make sure that it stays in place. Okay. Now onto the starter motor itself. We'll take a quick look at it. Alright, so that guy's up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and try to pull it down a little bit so we can gain a close access to the wires that are involved. Alright, so right here, let's see if we zoom in here. We take a look and we can see all the wires that are attached to our starter solenoid. So right here, this is where our large red feed is, and this one goes directly to the positive terminal of the battery. This is a non-fused wire, so this is live at all times. So if we didn't disconnect the battery, we can get really hurt by playing around with this. If bare metal, or if this touches any bare metal, or a wrench we put on it touches bare metal, we'll have it short the ground. You'll notice that we have other wires as well coming directly off of this terminal. So this is referred to as a lug terminal. This is a starter lug terminal, and this is the B terminal for battery. So this is our direct feed from the battery to our starter solenoid. Our other wire right here, this is our purple wire. It comes over here to the smaller lug terminal. And this is our S terminal for start. So this is the feed wire, or the signal wire, that energizes the starter solenoid to create movement inside that kicks out a pinion gear in the starter to engage with our flywheel. You can see right up inside of here. touching it. What it also does is it bridges a gap and it makes contact between this terminal right here and this terminal right here. That's going to feed this power directly into the starter motor body. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove those two lug terminal nuts, and as soon as we have those removed, we can pull our starter motor out. On average, these shouldn't be on too tight. Okay, so you simply pull those connections off. And then the next one. My 13mm wrench, put it right here. My start terminal. Great. My 8mm wrench. In this case. Alright. Pull that guy out. And then there we go. Starter motor is now removed. Okay. Now that my starter motor is removed, we'll take a quick look at it. So here's my starter motor. Easy and simple enough. Okay. Nothing too terribly complicated. You can see the pinion gear all the way on the inside right here. When you energize this, the pinion gear is going to kick out and it's going to make contact with our flywheel. So the flywheel keeps riding directly on the inside right here. It spins around just like that. So that's going to kick over. And then in the back side, we have our starter solenoid. And on our starter solenoid, we've got all of our different lug terminals. This is our battery terminal up top, and this is our S terminal right down here on the bottom. Okay, so we'll go ahead and I'll show you the installation procedure. Alright, now we're going to take a look at the installation procedure. So the installation procedure is very simple. Okay, it's just the reverse of what we basically did the whole entire time. There's only one or two precautions that we're going to have to take. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our starter motor, we're going to bring it back up to the top, and we're going to start by reconnecting our electrical connectors in this case. Now remember, on some starter motors you might have to disconnect your electrical before you remove the bolts for the starter motor, because some of these are really light and some of them are really heavy. The really heavy ones, it's always a good idea to try to disconnect the electrical connectors before you remove the bolts, because otherwise it can drop down right away and it can pull really hard on those wires. And if that's the case, we could cause damage to the wiring harness, and then that's just a lot of extra work to have to put everything back together. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to start with this purple wire. So I'm going to take a look here, get you back up towards the top, zoom in a little bit. So we'll get a nice bird's eye view right inside of there. So take the purple wire, and by the way, that little circle right there, that's called an eyelet. That's an electrical eyelet. It goes directly over the S terminal. I'm going to take the nut, slip it right into place. It's good to try to get it on finger tight first, and then we're just going to snug it up a little bit with our 8mm combo wrench. Okay, so you can see right there, we got the purple wire. It's installed to our starter solenoid. So next we're going to go, so that's the control circuit. So the next we're going to go to our power circuit, and that's our larger diameter wires. So I've got a couple of eyelets that I got to reattach, and actually now's probably a really good time to show you this. If I can get the camera out here, and bear with me, there's going to be some goofy angles, but I'll try to show you this as best I can. These wires right here, okay, these wires also connect onto the battery terminal. You can see that the connectors, the eyelets, they're pretty large diameter as far as around. And I've got 4 of them, including the main power feed wire. I don't know if you can see that or not. Okay, hopefully you can. So all of those are going to go on. Now these wires control different circuits, and they're hot at all times when they're connected to the starter motor. And they're also fusible links. Okay, if we take a close look at them, you can actually see that they say fuse on the wire. That means instead of having a fuse like a normal fuse that you would see, this one, the wire would literally just burn up in a small segment. Okay, it wouldn't cause a fire or nothing like that, but it's just a preventative thing. just in case there's any accidents or shorts to ground. Okay, so that being said, we're gonna go back and take a look at hooking these up. So we're gonna put the smaller or the thinner eyelets on first with the smaller diameter wires, and then we're gonna put our large power feed wire on. Okay, and that's gonna be the last connection that we make. I'm gonna take the terminal nut, thread it on there. Now it's at this point you're gonna be really careful. We take a look right here, and this terminal right here is our battery terminal, or our start terminal. And what I don't want to do is I want to make sure that I don't have a connection between, sorry about all the jostling around. Okay. I want to make sure that I don't have an accidental short to having this wire bridge across and touching that terminal right there. If this one jumps across and makes contact like that, as soon as I connect my battery, the starter motor will operate continuously until I disconnect the battery. So make sure that this wire right here, this positive terminal, stays isolated from this start terminal right there. Okay, they cannot touch. So that being said, we're gonna go ahead and snug this up. When you tighten this down, just turn it until it barely stops moving, and then just 2 fingers. You can see that. Back down a little bit. What we do, it's called 2-finger tight on it. Put 2 fingers on there, and then just push. Okay, and that's it. Now our starter motor is tight. Our wire connectors are good. So everything's connected to the solenoid. I'm going to go ahead and tuck the starter back up into position. So our next step, let's put the starter motor back inside of the transmission. Okay, this is our transmission bell housing right here. Okay, starter motor's going to slide in there. And I got the 2 bolts that I have to go ahead and put directly up into the starter motor body. When I put these 2 bolts up inside of here, I'm going to start with the bottom one first, the lowest one, and I'm going to locate it, and I'm just going to try to get it in there finger tight. Alright, now that one threaded in alright, it's not all the way tight. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put the upper bolt in place. Once I got them both started, then I can go ahead with tightening them down. That one's tight. There we go. Nice and tight. Alright, so now my starter bolts are all nice and connected. Starter motor's in place. Our installation underneath is complete. So now we're going to move up back to the top again. So the next step is bring your vehicle back down, reconnect the battery. Alright, here you can see we got the negative side of the battery reconnected. So negative side's good. We got this fuse box, junction box that's kind of in our way, so we're going to go ahead and put that back. And once we got that back, we're going to go ahead and turn the key and see if we start. Okay, and see if we got a job complete. Double check all of our wires. Make sure nothing is coming into contact with our pulleys for our serpentine belt right down here. Okay, we already ran into an issue with that. It was quite unfortunate, and look what it did. This wire right here, you can see we got some exposed wire. That's because it was leaning up against that pulley right down there while the engine was running. Shorted it out, and lots of sparks. Okay, engine died. Luckily, it didn't blow up anything, so our PCM was actually all right. We didn't have any issues. It was very short. We shut it off right away, disconnected the battery, solved the problem. Now we just got to patch up that wire. Okay, so I'll go ahead and crank it over, and we'll see if we can get it to start. Always a fun part about a shop car. Batteries are always dead.